Hello, this is Rick Thomas. I am the Special Project Coordinator for the Thurston County Courthouse and Regional Administration Buildings Project. It's being sponsored by the Board of County Commissioners here in Thurston County. I'm going to be going through a slide deck today to describe some of the facts in regards to this particular project. There's going to be 5 parts to this slide presentation. We're going to be talking about the process that we have gone through and that we're going to continue on. We're going to be talking about the existing courthouse and the needs that that presents. We're then going to talk about how the needs can be addressed in a new facility. And then last, we're going to discuss, and I'm going to go over some points regarding what the proposed courthouse could be. So here's a little bit of information about the process and the project timeline. We've completed several bits of work to date. In 2013, Thomas Architect Studios did a space and needsman assessment for the county. That was followed in 2015 by a feasibility study. Then in 2015, there was also a security study that was done by Thomas Architecture Studios and HOK. In 2016, Ming Consultants completed a report to do the assessment of the existing courthouse conditions. Then in 2018, we've just completed a comprehensive comparative feasibility study, specifically looking at 3 different sites. And then in 2019, in January, the commissioners selected a preferred site that we'll discuss a little bit farther, and decided in April that the decision for a public vote would be completed in April of 2020. The upcoming milestones include in April 2020, the public vote, and that will be the voters of the County of Thurston. In late 2020, we anticipate the design will begin, and again, that's assuming that the voters will approve the measure. In January of 2021, the county tax assessment will begin, and it will continue for the next 25 years. In late 2021, we anticipate construction beginning. It'll be about a 2-year to maybe 30-month process. And then in early 2024, we anticipate the project being completed and the services would be open in the new facility. Now, the existing Thurston County Courthouse buildings are located up on the hilltop in West Olympia, and there are 6 buildings, and we'll go over each one of those in just a couple of moments here. To give you a little bit of background in regards to who are in the different facilities, we have the Justice and County Services that include the District Court and the Superior Court, the County Clerk's Office, the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Pretrial Services, Public Defense, County Auditor, County Assessor, the Treasurer, the Board of County Commissioners, Community Planning and Economic Development, Human Resources, and Public Health. Now, there's many reasons that the citizens would be visiting this building. Most of them would be there to serve on a jury, but many others come to make payments, to apply for permits, to apply for passports, register to vote, to visit a county official, conduct court-related business, or attend a meeting or a hearing. The existing City of Olympia Justice Center is called the Lee Creighton Justice Center. It is the existing facility of the Olympia Municipal Court, and it includes the city prosecutor, the community courts, the probation services, public defense, the Olympia Police and Holding, as well as all of the other court proceedings. Now, a little more information specifically about the courthouse complex up on the hilltop. In Building 1, it's a 3-story building, about 43,000 square feet. This is where our central services or our facilities operations group resides, along with our information technology staff. The auditor, assessor, and treasurer's office are also located in Building 1, along with the commissioners and the community planning and development. In Building 2, this is a 2-story Superior Court building. It's about 41,000 square feet, and it includes the Superior Court, the Clerk's Office, and the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Building 3 is about 77,000 square feet. It's 3 stories, and it contains the District Court, the Sheriff's Office, in-custody holding, and the Sally Port. Buildings 4, 5, and 6 contain other services of the county. Building 4 is a 2-story facility that houses our human resources, water resource stewardship, the Commissioner's and Finance Office, part of the Auditor's Office, the Information Services or the Geodata Center, pretrial services, the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and that's primarily the Civil Division, as well as the Public Defense. I'm now going to talk a little bit about the existing courthouse and explain to you some of the facts surrounding some of the constraints that we have. I want to start off by just going over some of the wayfinding issues of the building. There, as you saw from the previous slides, there are 6 different buildings that are on 3 different blocks. There's not a very clear sense of entrance into the different facilities, and there's very limited queuing space for security screening. You can imagine having 6 different buildings to go to, and if you are not familiar with the complex, it can be quite confusing regarding which facility and which office you want to go visit. Once you actually get into the facilities, you'll find that they are very narrow corridors. The departments themselves are located behind doors that are off of public corridors. There's no central information desk. It's a very inefficient information and direction system. Quite often, folks have to wait in line to ask questions only to find out that they are in the wrong place. And this also has caused issues with staff efficiencies, basically being reduced because of constantly needing to redirect the public citizens to the place they're trying to find. It's also rather hard to access. Parking is limited and spaces are often full. Jurors walk up to a quarter of a mile from the parking lot to report to jury duty, regardless of what the weather might be. The wheelchair access is very poor, and in fact, the existing facility was built in 1978, and that was before legislation for the American Disabilities Act. The transit service is rated at 40 out of 100. And again, with the multiple buildings and entrances, it makes finding the place you're trying to go rather difficult. I now want to talk about the needs. In regards to the safety and security risks, there are very tight spaces that make security screening very challenging. As you can see from the photo, this is going into Building 3, which is the District Court. The queuing to actually go through security quite often goes outside, and only 2 of the 6 buildings have a security screening station at this point. This slide is an indication as to how the circulation of jurors, judges, and in-person custody happen within the existing courtroom. You can tell by the hall and the different colors that the in custody are in red. They come up an elevator, and in order to get into any of the courtrooms, they literally are walking down the same hallway that the judges and the juries that are a part of these court proceedings are using. And it is not an uncommon situation where either the jury or the judges have to close the door and go back into their office or room while the in custody are being brought into the courtrooms. This situation could be a very potential security risk. The need for security is exemplified in Building 3 and Building 2 when you take a look at the security screening areas. Both of them are very tight spaces, very little room for proper circulation. The short vestibules allow for limited queuing space, and in fact, there are many times that individuals are exposed to the outside while they're actually waiting to get into the building. In addition to that, the exiting public quite often goes directly behind the actual security screening station itself. In regards to some of the systems of the building, they're just simply worn out and they're substandard. heating and cooling systems are inefficient and very costly to operate. Many of the roofs have leaks in them. The buildings do not meet the current earthquake safety codes, and most of the data cabling is very limited in regards to it being outdated for modern technology. These particular buildings were, again, built in 1978, and they are over 40 years old. The equipment that you see in these photos, as well as the roofs, are not meant to last that long. These structures were built to really last 25 to 30 years. I wanted to go over just briefly the history in regards to just the maintenance and operation of the facilities for the last 10 years or so. I also wanted to point out that there was a report done, referenced before, by Maine consultants that put together a list that added up to $50 million of building infrastructure work that would need to be completed in order to just bring the building back up to its current standards and allow the facility to continue on for 10 years. The building itself, even with these improvements, they would not be energy efficient and they would continue to be expensive to operate and maintain. The chart that you see on the right gives an overview of the actual maintenance and capital expenditures that have gone into the building. I really want to point out two parts of this graph to you. The first part of the chart in 2013, there's a substantial amount of funding that was put in for capital projects. That $1.5 million was put together in order to address some major roof leak issues at that point. And 6 years later, we are at the point where we have significant roof projects that need to be completed again. And then I wanted to point out from 2016 to 2019, we've been averaging almost $1 million a year that we've been spending for operation and maintenance costs of the building, as well as between $500,000 to $1 million a year in capital improvement costs. As we saw on the previous slide, there are about $50 million of known maintenance issues. And in addition to what we had already talked about, there are just purely finishes that are wearing out. There's hardware that's outdated. We've mentioned before there's many roof leaks, and the existing IT structure is inadequate. And just as a reminder, again, the buildings were built in 1978, and that was a few years before desktop computers and laptops were even a part of the business community. In addition to that, we do have the safety issue. The current buildings, again, were constructed to meet the 1978 earthquake codes, and now that it's 2019, they have dramatically increased in their constraints. This is a collage of a few pictures just showing the different components that are just aging and flat worn out. Again, you can see a few photos in here showing the different roofs and the conditions they're in. It gives a look at an outdated HVAC unit, rooftop unit. Again, they're typically designed to last for 25 to 30 years, and they're up to 40 years now. There are some rooftop units that are actually rusted at this point and need to be replaced if the building were to continue. We have failing soffits. We also have electrical panels that are at their maximum capacity. And just to give you an idea, again, these are so old that getting parts to replace as well as maintain are very difficult and costly. Here's one example of an electrical issue that we have. In 2018, we actually had a power outage at the courthouse that shut down the entire facility for over a day, while the main feeder, due to age and deterioration, basically had an arc short, and it just cut the power to the entire facility. There's been a question asked at many of the town halls as to why this particular site was chosen at Plum Street. And to begin with, the state law requires that the courthouse be in the county seat, which is Olympia. There were other considerations that were followed, such as making sure that we had enough actual acreage or space to be able to build the facilities, that there was road and transit access, that utility services were available, that there was space for parking. The risk for an earthquake and sea level rise were also highly considered. The public gave us input at many open houses and by a survey about alternative sites, accessibility, and compatibility with the neighbors. In all, we looked at over 12 sites before the selection was made by the county commissioners. Here's just a snapshot of the annual energy consumption cost. For the existing courthouse, the cost is about $1.52 per square foot. Probably the more important number, however, is the BTUs per square foot being 77,000. Now, if you were to compare that to what a new courthouse would be that would be built to energy codes of today, as well as sustainable initiatives, the BTUs per square foot, which is an energy use, would be closer to 40,000. And the actual cost per square foot would be closer to around 77 cents. This is an interesting scenario in that we need 50% more space in order to meet the needs of county government, but even with that additional 50% more space, we would be 50% more efficient in our energy use. Just wanted to give a quick background in regards to the history of the Thurston County Courthouse. The Thurston County has actually resided in 4 courthouses since 1892. The courthouse that you see on the left is still in use, although it's not a courthouse anymore for the county. The building that you see from 1905 to 1930 has been replaced with a different building. And then the building from 1930 to 1978 was where the county resided for 48 years in their courthouse, and basically outgrew that, and that's why they needed to relocate up to the present hilltop. A couple of items to be pointed out: all the previous courthouses were constructed out of stone material, and they were designed to last 100+ years. And for those familiar with Olympia and Thurston County, you will still see the 2 buildings on the left. They're in full operation right now with some of the state agencies. Again, the current courthouse in the bottom right hand, it was built in 1978. It's wood frame construction with flat roofs and a brick veneer, and it has rooftop HVAC units. This slide gives population information, and starting in 1978, if you move out 46 years, which would be the time of 2024, the expected time the building would be completed and occupied, in that 46 years, the population would have doubled from about 150 up to almost 300,000 individuals. If you look an additional 30 years out into the future, which the building site will accommodate, there would be an additional 150,000 residents that would be moving into the Thurston County area. So, Thurston County Courthouse was built when the county only had half the population, and the area now continues to grow. A lack of space causes late start times and delays in the courtrooms. This is not only the situation for the courtrooms, but it is the same for many of the different offices within the facility. When there's a larger population, which we now have and will have in the future, there just simply needs to be more space for staff in order to provide the services that the county requires to give to its citizens. So the departments have grown beyond the size of their current building footprint. There's many inefficiencies due to lack of much needed interdepartmental adjacencies. The level of service is being limited by the available staff offices. There's redundancies in common spaces due to segregation of different offices. There's overbooked conference rooms and limited parking for staff and for visitors. This is just one example. Again, this is the second floor of the Superior Court building. The yellow that you see there is the public corridor that is right outside of the courtrooms, between the courtrooms and the prosecuting attorney's office. This is an area that is used by attorneys from both sides of the litigation. There are no offices, there are no special meeting rooms. All the discussions happen right in the hallway. This is a part of the project, if it were to go forward, that we would be able to resolve by adding rooms that give privacy for those conversations. I'm now going to go and move on to how we're going to be addressing the needs. This is going to be a joint county-city effort. The pretrial services for both the city and the county have many that are the same. We need to keep the jail resources dedicated to the higher risk offenders. We're going to ensure to follow up court appearances and preserve the public safety. We're going to identify potential interdepartment efficiencies and address safety, defendant well-being, and return court appearances and cost savings. There's also some programs that are a diversion from the courts, such as the community youth services and friendship diversion services. There is a joint services provided by the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health called Wellness Centers, and there's the restorative justice programs that both the City of Olympia and Thurston County Judicial are very involved in. Here are some of the benefits for the new courthouse. Security improvements would include one common point of security and screening for both the courthouse and the administration facilities. The circulation would be much better. We'd have proper separation of the public, the judges, the juries, the persons in custody, the defendants, the prosecutors, and the witnesses, as well as having secure parking for jurors. There will be tremendous accessibility improvements. We'd be able to improve throughout the facility site access, parking, building access, courtrooms, and all public spaces and private offices. Just another note on this, when this building was constructed in 1978, that was before the ADA requirements had become law. The county has tried their best to improve accommodation, but due to the configuration and construction of the original buildings, it's impossible to completely adhere to those requirements. This new facility would allow us the ability to make sure that we're meeting all of the ADA requirements. The transit score for the facility at the new Plum Street site would be 56 out of 100. The pedestrian score, it would be 85 out of 100. There's excellent existing commuting routes for bicycles and for walkers. And for automobiles, there's close proximity to freeways and major transportation corridors. In 2019, the Thurston County Commissioners selected the Plum Street site, and the Plum Street site is where the old Olympia City Hall was located near the downtown, and it will replace the existing Olympia Municipal Justice Center that is presently on the site. In this particular selection, the city and county, as commented before, would share courtrooms and facilities. I'm going to give a little, some facts in regards to the proposed courthouse. What you see on this particular screen is just an artistic rendering of what the potential courthouse could look like. It's not meant to depict what it actually would be, but just simply to give an idea as to what a sustainable, high-quality Class A building might look like in the downtown area of Olympia. So, a little bit about the proposed courthouse. The proposition has been put on the ballot for the citizens to vote on for April the 28th, 2020. The new courthouse would be built to last 75 to 100 years. The voters get to decide whether to increase property tax for the courthouse construction, and this measure will be a simple majority required to pass. The proposed courthouse itself would be around 330,000 square feet. It'd be about 110 feet tall. The administrative building would be about 70 feet tall. The anticipated schedule, the construction to start in late 2021 with an anticipated completion in 2024. Here's some of the features that may be in the new courthouse. There would be more space for the courts and for the different county services. It'd be very energy efficient construction, saving on heating, cooling, lighting, maintenance, and technology. Be a very sustainable design using principles applied to materials, to air quality, and to lighting. From an operations perspective, it would be one-stop customer service to help people find their way into the offices that they need. This would also give us the ability to have better online services and an IT infrastructure to support that. In regards to safety and security, in the new facility, we have the ability to build our courthouses and courtrooms in such a manner that we would have one common security screening station for anyone coming into the courthouse and the administration buildings. However, we would have separate juror, judges, and witnesses that are separate from the defendants within the courthouse itself. And as you can see from the drawing to your left, there are elevators that come up directly between the courtrooms. And if you remember back to the slide earlier about where the judge, the jury, and the in custody basically go into the exact same hallway, in a new courthouse facility that would not happen. They would never cross paths. The only time that the judge and the jury would come into the same location as the person in custody literally would be in the courtroom. The public spaces themselves would be much more amenable to the public coming to observe the court proceedings, as well as there being many additional meeting spaces for the clients and their attorneys. This setup allows for there to be a significantly increased safety for the public, the staff, and persons in custody. It will reduce the risk of mistrials, and as mentioned, it will allow there to be attorney-client conference rooms that would be outside of each courtroom. From an accessibility perspective, with this new courthouse setup, there would be more parking and bus stops. There would be better access by foot, bike, and by car, and there would be better access for people with disabilities. Now, how is this courthouse going to be paid for? To begin with, it's going to be funded by a property tax increase collected over 25 years. This was special legislation that was passed a couple of years ago by the Washington State Legislature. If this ballot is approved, the annual property tax on a $300,000 home would increase by about $12 a month. As you can see from the pie chart graph, the county has really only a small slice of the amount of taxes that come from the property tax for our use. And in this particular scenario, the amount of increase of property tax is actually less than 4%. There are many other jurisdictions that use property tax for other reasons. Here are some partnership opportunities between the county and the city. For example, the public and the staff would have support spaces together, so the county and city can share a lot of spaces. There'll be multi-use spaces, jury assembly room, pretrial services, social services that again can all be shared between the county and the city, court-appointed special advocates, lobby space, and parking. There's some additional benefits in that it's a reduced operational cost for not only the county but for the city of Olympia. It's a lower first cost and long-term cost savings, so from the perspective of life cycle cost, this would be a very good thing to do. It will definitely reduce the carbon footprint. It'll give many shared common areas and services, some of which could potentially even be available to the public, and there's a definite increase in security. These next two slides are meant to just simply show a little bit of the detail that we went through in the study to assure ourselves that the amount of space needed could actually be accommodated for on the particular site. So You can look at these slides in more detail if you want to, but this just simply gives an idea in regards to where the different Thurston County services could potentially go in the building if it were to be constructed. There's still a lot of work to be done once the design might start. This particular artist rendering, again, not to depict what the buildings actually might look like, but to give you some ideas to the scale of the buildings within the city. Kind of starting on the left-hand side of the slide, there's potential that there could be an administration building that would be along Plum Street. It's about 150,000 square feet. The courthouse building itself is about 180,000 square feet. And then just to the east or to the right on the slide is a parking structure that would be constructed for about 750 parking stalls. And we would have an additional 150 parking stalls that would be on the surface. The advantage obviously for this is parking is a lot closer to what the new building would be in comparison to the parking on the hilltop right now. There very likely would be an area for drop-off of passengers and easy ADA access into the building. And again, for those of you who are residents and understand and have been around downtown for a while, the Yoshira Japanese Gardens are on this particular property, and the idea would be to be able to just incorporate that into the overall part of the project. This artist rendition, again, just gives an idea as to what the building might look like as you're driving off of the freeway and up Plum Street. It just gives a real good indication as to what the civic presence might be coming into downtown Olympia. Kind of the idea here being that we would have a building within a park. Again, this just gives a little different perspective as to how the buildings might actually be able to play out on the site itself. And then again, this is the artist rendering regarding what the main lobby could be. And again, such a contrast to the existing facility that we have now. We would have the actual security checkpoint. This is a rendering kind of showing walking through that. You would have on the first and second floor many of the services that are the highest use to the public, so it would make it easy for both county and city services to be provided and be easily found. There'd definitely be direction and reader board right on that floor. So if there are any questions that you might have regarding these slides, feel free to contact Rick Thomas, the project manager, or Megan Porter, the public information supervisor.